All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this. We're going to be talking today about coming to Jira from Trello. And I'd love to see in the chat real quick, how many folks here have used Jira? How many have used Trello? Just post in the chat, like both Jira, Trello, or neither. Just post one of those four things. And I'm just curious to kind of see. All right, so I'm seeing, I'm expecting all of these sort of, different responses, with some people have only used one, some people using both, expecting a lot of heavy Jira stuff. So yeah, this is checking out with what I was expecting here. So some of you might be attending this conference because you heard that Jira is like Trello on steroids, and maybe you're familiar with Trello and you're like, yeah, I'll give this Jira thing a chance. Personally, I'm a diehard Trello fan. So when I was at work and my team told me that we're planning to use Jira for organizing our sprints and backlogs, my heart briefly sank for a second, only because of my deep affection for Trello. But I also got a little excited because it gave me a reason to learn Jira and explore another Atlassian tool. And I'm a huge fan of Atlassian. And so, it gave me a good reason to play around with it. And so today I'm going to be talking about Trello and Jira and what it was like to come over to the dark side from Trello. But for Jira enthusiasts who are actually interested in Trello, you might also consider this a primer in Trello if you're thinking about switching, or just even want to see, can I use both? And spoiler alert, the answer is yes, you can. And it'll kind of help you understand which tool might be right for your team and your use case. So just in case you're wondering who I am and why I'm talking about this, let me introduce myself. My name is Brittany Joiner, and in case you can't tell, I'm obsessed with Trello. I've been using it for over a decade, and I use it to keep track of my side projects, my career goals, different trips that I'm taking. I just had a trip to Dublin, and I used it to organize everything with that. I plan out all of my meals, actually make it plan out all of my meals. I automatically make it generate my meals and my shopping list for me. I'm still working on trying to make it cook the meals, but haven't found a power up for that yet. So I use Trello for all sorts of things. And I currently work full-time as a software engineer at Elastic, but I used to work in marketing. So throughout my whole career, I've had a lot of need for tools to help me organize myself and organize the projects I'm working on and keeping all of my tasks in one place. And if you've heard my name before, you might have seen me around in the Atlassian community. And I've been a community leader for a couple years. I've also hosted some events. As nerdy as it sounds, I genuinely enjoy answering people's questions about Trello. It's like actually fun for me. So much fun for me that I actually recently earned the 500 answers posted badge. And so I enjoy doing that. And I also started a newsletter all about Trello and a YouTube channel. And so I'll share more links with that soon as we go. But yeah, so I've also got some friends joining here. Jimmy is having some internet trouble, but he's probably going to be in the chat at some point. And we've also got some mods here for things as well. But I feel free, like I said, to post your questions as we go. We'll flag any and kind of go through whatever we can at the end here. So, all right, so why is this girl who's obsessed with Trello, why am I talking about Jira? Because even though I'm obsessed with Trello, like I said, my team wasn't as enthused about it, and Jira was picked. And so I had to find out why, what's going on? How do I use both of these tools? How do I use either of them? What's the difference? Like they say, if you can't beat them, join them. And so I was like, all right, it's time to explore Jira. And so let's, get into all of this here. So now that we've, got all of the pieces out of the way of who I am, why I like the tools, what we do, let's just also talk about what they have in common. And so first of all, at a quick glance, you're, regardless of which tool you're using, or maybe you've got them both up in a tab, and you're like, these, core components are pretty similar. In Trello, we're used to defining our base as a board. I like to explain it as a digital whiteboard with supercharged sticky notes. Those are called cards, and they're organized across the board in horizontal lists that go across the screen. Jira seems to have similar sort of things with the same sort of boards and that sort of linear task progression. They call it issues instead of cards, but it's the same sort of concept. And cards in Trello can have subtasks. We call them checklists. They're not necessarily synonymous with other cards, but they can be. And I see, also in Jira and Jira Work Management, and thankfully I've noticed all of those same sort of things there. So we also have subtasks on those cards. And There are also supercharged sticky notes. One thing I thought was actually really interesting is that I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but you can customize the fields that you have on your cards in Jira, or sorry, your issues in Jira. And you can also do that in Trello, but it's actually a paid feature. So it was really interesting to see, like, right away, you can customize, exactly the type of different fields you have in there. So and as far as lists are concerned in Jira, there actually seem to be more options here, which is both good and can be a little confusing. You can organize your issues by epic, which is basically issues that are related to a larger project. So for instance, it could be like migrating to cloud or building, a new feature in your app or something like that. But you can also organize tasks by sprint, which is like typically a time-based period. So like my dev team at work, we work in 2-week sprints. And yeah, it looks like some views also generate these lists automatically based on the status a card fell in. So that's typically how we would use it in Trello. So that was cool to see that can come kind of like right out of the box. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's a little bit different and the terms aren't exactly the same, but conceptually we're dealing with the same kind of format and organization of info. So that was pretty cool. And I know we all love talking about finances and money and things. So if your finance team wants a recap from this conference, you can let them know that as far as Trello and Jira are concerned, the pricing models and actual prices are pretty similar between them. I did notice a few things that you can get for free in Jira that you might have to pay for in Trello, and I'll talk more about that. But one of the big things is custom fields. And so that's something that, it's interesting that that's included in the free spot, but also there's a limit of having 10 people in your workspace in Jira and in the free plan. And so if you're going to need to have more than that, you're going to need to explore multiple spaces or more options with that. Whereas in Trello, in the free Trello plan, you're limited to 10 boards, but you can have as many people on those boards as you want. So I thought that was kind of an interesting switch up between the two. But otherwise, they're pretty similar. And the way they scale is with, more automation power, we'll talk more about that and kind of compare those two directly. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for like which tool is cheaper, the answer is they're both very similar. And that's probably not going to be the decision you need to make when it comes to which tool should I use. Like price is probably not going to be your biggest factor there. So that's something, to keep in mind. And they also charge per user. So that's another thing. Like after you get out of the free plan for either one of them, you're going to be paying per user in that spot. So something to keep in mind. But again, not going to necessarily be a limiter between the two plans because they're very similarly priced at, $5 user to $10 user, depending on which plan you're going with. So to compare those sort of plans, like I said, Jira offers 3 different plans, Trello offers 3 different plans, standard, premium, and enterprise. And the main difference between those, like I said, is access to custom fields or advanced checklists and unlimited boards. That's pretty much the main benefits of standard. Whereas with premium, you get some more advanced views that it looks like are actually already out of the box with Jira. So that's another thing that kind of comes in, for free with Jira. And enterprise basically offers some additional security features like being able to disable the ability to create public boards, and you can create organizations and set visibility with that as well. So definitely, there's some features there that you might be interested in. So basically the TLDR of this slide, these are both great tools for storing units of data and managing, owners, dates, conversations, and different documents and pieces going with them. So that's in a nutshell what they both are. So some of the things you're going to recognize when like I said, mentioned going from Trello to Jira, but going from Jira to Trello, you kind of start seeing some similarities here. So first of all, dragging and dropping cards or issues is the same. So this is something that I was super happy to see, because if you want to quickly update the status of a task or move it to another column or list, you can just drag it and drop it. And it just doesn't really get any simpler than that. That's always why I tell people it's so easy to get started with Trello because there's lots you can layer onto it, but at the end of the day, updating a card can often be as simple as just dragging it with your mouse. And so it was really nice to see that Jira also has that same sort of, functionality with it. And so let's be honest, everybody talks about crossing items off their checklist, but can we talk about that feeling of dragging a card to done? I don't know if this works in Jira. I really want to know if it does, but in Trello, if you add it's like the ta-da emoji. If you add that to your done list thing, then confetti will spray across your board whenever you like move a card over in there, just to celebrate. And I think that's super fun. And does anybody know, like, is there something like that in Jira, or the ability to do that? Because yeah, when you drag that card across, I need that sort of like celebration. I really enjoy it. This is a critical feature for me. So that's super important to know. But next, you'll also notice that issues and cards, although spelled differently, are very, very similar. So they both allow you to set a status and a list. You can add due dates, you can assign members, you can add comments, you can attach fields, or sorry, files, and do whatever pretty much you want with it. One interesting thing is that in Jira, you have a little bit more control over the fields in your card. So you can remove some of these default fields, and you can also add new ones, at least without needing to configure other power-ups or pay for a premium subscription. You can do those things in Trello. Specifically, you can add more custom fields. I don't know about the ability to remove some, but it does seem you have that ability in Jira as well. So if you're really interested in being able to customize things, you might like that about Jira, because you have access to all the things you want, but a little bit more control over them. So I thought that was pretty cool. You'll also recognize automation. So it's clear I've definitely only scratched the surface of what's possible in automation with Jira, but from what I can tell, it's very similar to Trello's automation, which is also known as Butler from back in the good old days. But both tools have an automation editor where you select triggers, which is basically when this happens type of actions. And it can be, when a card is moved somewhere, when something's added to a card, or an issue. I keep saying card, but just know, for most intents and purposes, I'm referring to cards and issues here. It can trigger something, a different action to occur. So you just tie those things together and set up your trigger, and then your action of post a comment, or send an email, or whatever it is. So both tools have this really easy to use editor. It doesn't require coding or anything complicated with that. So
we have the new link on the bit too.
I think we might have somebody not muted here. If we can check that out, but yeah, so I'll keep going. But yeah, you'll also take comfort in knowing that both tools have excellent templates. So, oops, sorry, I meant to actually go to this automation slide here. But you'll also notice that both tools have excellent templates. And so if you're coming to the Trello side, you might feel really overwhelmed at first, but there's plenty of ways to say, here's my use case. What should I set up Jira to look like? And this makes getting started very easy, because Jira and Trello they both have these templates that will configure your setup for you based on what you're trying to attempt with it. So it takes out all of the guesswork of like, how do I set up Jira? Well, you don't really have to worry about exactly, do I need a board? Do I need an epic? Just say what you're doing, and it will give you the options. It will preset it up for you. And you can always build from scratch in both cases, but with both tools, if that's something that you are into. You'll also recognize in Jira, and if you're coming to Jira from Trello, you'll recognize a lot of different ways to view your cards or issues. So in Trello, we're quite used to the board view, probably what Trello is most known for. But over the last couple of years, Atlassian's decided to add more views, such as dashboard that shows you some stats about your board, like how many cards are in each list, and how many are assigned to certain members, or due dates, or labels, things like that. There's also a calendar view that plots your cards by their due date, a map view that plots them on a map by their locations, and table view, which is now an option for those who just kind of miss the spreadsheet sort of view of their data, their tasks. So Jira seems to have exactly the same options, although I can't find map view. So I'm curious if anybody in here is like, actually, it does have map view, or so-and-so has made a app, which is, I think, what you in Jira land call your power-ups. Someone has an app that lets you do that. That would be pretty cool. But otherwise, they seem pretty similar. And actually, the dashboard view seems like it has a lot more robustness to it than Trello's. So I thought that was pretty cool as well. And when it comes to pricing, you don't have to pay for these views of data in Jira, from what I can tell. Whereas in Trello, you'll need to pay $10 a month per user in the workspace to be able to see these types of views. So for some of them, a caveat with that is calendar view and map view are also available as power-ups that you can add to a board for free. So the functions are a little bit different, but I would say about 90% of the functionality is there. So depending on what you're looking for, there's definitely ways to make it work. So once again, it's kind of hard to say if one's a differentiating feature, but you'll be happy to know if you go through switching back and forth tools, you're still going to have these views. So lastly, you'll recognize filters, which is the ability to narrow down the cards that you're seeing in whatever view you're in based on specific criteria. So I think Jira is actually really interesting with this because it also, has that. Trello and Jira both have the ability to do that. But Jira seems to offer, like, on the one hand, some super simple ways of doing it, like simply, oh, I just want to see cards with this status. Whereas in Trello, you'd probably need to, you can filter by labels, due dates, or members. And you can filter by cards that contain a specific word, but those are your filter options in Trello. Whereas Jira will pre-configure, it seems like, these sort of buttons for you, but also you can get super specific with your filters by using JQL, Jira query language. And I started to go down a whole rabbit hole with this, and I was like, this is incredible. I could basically create a filter to show exactly what I want to see, of assigned to these people in this sprint and has been completed and has this label, or whatever I want to see with it. So I definitely know a lot of people from Trello who are like, man, I wish I could, adjust my filters a lot more, because admittedly, I think that's something Trello could grow a bit in more. For example, I can't say, show me all of my cards except ones with this label. You basically have to say, show me all the cards with these labels, and then just not check the one you don't want to see. So that's I think that's something very interesting about Jira as well. So you're going to be excited. You're going to be like, okay, I recognize some things. I can, kind of move my way into here and it's fine. But some things might frustrate you. And so some of those things might be that, there's a learning curve. So it's a bit of a steeper learning curve than Trello, because one of my favorite things about Trello is that I can just jump in a board and get going. There's not too many buttons right away. There are too many options for setting up. I pretty much give it a name. I don't even need to select a template. I can just say, here's my name, here's 3 lists, here's a card for an item, boom, done. And send it over to somebody and they can, open it up and it's just ready to go. And I'm sure those of you who are very used to Trello are very used to Jira are probably yeah, Jira is the exact same. And I would say you're probably right when you're more used to it. But for somebody who's just getting new to it, it's a little bit, I'm still at the point where I'm trying to click around and make sure I'm setting it up correctly. And if I'm about to send it to somebody to jump into and they've never used it before, I think I'm going to have to explain it to them and, help them figure out how I use it, because it's a very visual and there's a lot of different buttons and things to do in it, which is great because people want those options, but it can also be really distracting and confusing to know where to start when you jump right in. Whereas Trello is just visually, I feel like, a lot more cleaner. And one of the things I like about it is you pretty much have all of the options to do whatever you want in Trello, but they're kind of, I don't want to say hidden, but they're put away behind power-ups or board settings. So it's not overwhelming to you until you need them. But you can, the argument of that is, oh, but then it's harder to find. So pros and cons. And it's not to say that Jira is hard or visually unappealing. It's just that you'll probably need to prepare for a bit steeper of a learning curve and, brace yourself. It's okay. You're going to recognize things in there, but give yourself some time to learn it out and don't say, oh, hey, it's a 5-minute task today. I'm just going to switch over right there. You might also be frustrated with team adoption. If your team is used to using Trello, they might be a bit nervous and intimidated by something like Jira and the steep learning curve that's associated with that. They might also say things like, wait a minute, isn't that a tool for developers? We're a marketing team. What does that have to do with us? And the truth is, both tools, Trello and Jira, are used by all sorts of different organizations and different types, marketing teams, HR teams, sales teams. It's a misconception for both of these tools that they're just meant for developers. And especially with the introduction of Jira Work Management, it's very much meant to be more of a oh, you're not IT, that's okay. We have a friendly tool that, lets you get the core features of Jira that you need without feeling oh, hook in your GitHub, that kind of thing. So, anyway, so I think that's pretty interesting. But and then lastly, you might be frustrated for just a bit because it's kind of like your cheese has been moved and your lingo's a little bit different. Change is hard. You're probably going to be, able to do all of the things that you did in Trello in Jira. It's just going to take a little bit of time to find where all those are and set them up. And same with your team. They're going to get up to speed with it, but it's going to take a little bit while to get used to, where do we do this? What do we call it? Oh, we call it this. Don't need to use this part of Jira. Just use this part of Jira. So, for instance, somebody might be like, what the heck is a recorder? And why is that a role on an issue? that was one of my questions. And apparently it's, the person who is reporting the issue, which I actually think that's not a bad thing to track. I kind of like that. So yeah. So anyway, so that's very cool. So yeah, so there's things that are going to frustrate you for sure, but there's also things that are going to excite you. And let's talk about what those things are, because that's a lot more fun. So first of all, while folks may be frustrated by this, others will actually quite welcome a more enterprisey feeling tool. As much as I hate to say this, I feel like a lot of people in larger companies just seem to think Trello is just a toy and Jira commands respect. And, to be honest, I think that's why a lot of, my company was like, not even really considering adopting Trello. And, Jira was like the go-to tool for organizing our dev teams and things. And so I think that that's kind of clear in the way it's designed. And that's how this tool has kind of stood the test of time. So if you want to join the big kids club, so to speak, you'll start suddenly feeling more elite and technical once you're using Jira. And there's definitely plenty of different resources to help you go along the way there, which I'll share with that soon. But you're definitely going to be surrounded by some more enterprisey type of groups of people there. But that's not to say that if you're not enterprisey, you can't use Jira, because it also, there's also plenty of small and solo developers and non-developers using Jira to organize things. So it works both ways. You'll also be excited that it's familiar. So I'm not going to belabor this point, but if you've been using Trello and you're going to Jira, it's not like you're adopting a completely new tool. It's kind of like you're just hanging out with a sibling, if you will, because, they have the same parent company. I know Atlassian's tried to kind of make them separate tools, but relatable. And I actually think they've done a decent job of making them different products, but that are different enough that you see the value in why one over the other for certain things. But they're similar enough that it's not an extremely painful switch. So that'll be great. Some things are actually easier in Jira. Despite the fact that I did mention a steeper learning curve, there's just a couple things that are easier to do in Trello than in Jira. For instance, like I said, I thought that filter button that just, quickly just show me by status. You don't have to add labels and do all of that. You can just click right away and it will automatically tag the status and filter it. And so I thought that was pretty cool that was just kind of ready to go there. You'll also have more control and more customization. Which is the number one complaint that I see from people about Trello, is that they can't customize it so that certain people can see certain content and other people can't see certain content, or they can't, remove certain fields or limit who can do what or whatever. And so there's ways to circumvent that in Trello, right? You can kind of still achieve what you need to without needing all of those customized settings, or needing to go into those customized settings. But Jira does offer them all as part of the app. Right outside the box is toggle, turn off, turn on or off type of things. So if you've got a very specific vision for how you want to organize your project management process and who can do what and who can see what, then you'll be happily surprised with all the options for customizing that in Jira, once you figure out where to find all those settings. Another thing you might be excited about is Jira is that it has project wikis and readmes. And so Trello was never really meant to be a documentation tool, and it shows, which is totally fine. I love Trello, but if I'm crafting content, I'm still going to go to a Google Doc or, something in Confluence. I'm not going to necessarily transcribe a whole thing in a description of a Trello card. But Jira actually has documents and wikis as part of the space. So you can send someone to a board, but they're also right next to a page with information about how to use that board or other documentation that relates to the project. And you'll also appreciate the reports that are coming out of the box and customizable. So I've mentioned that, Trello has reporting via the dashboard view, and there's also tons of power-ups that give you more data about your reports. But I was super impressed actually with Jira's out-of-the-box dashboard view that didn't require any configuration and just automatically started sharing things and shows more exciting stats besides just number of cards and, certain places and things like that. So didn't require any power-ups or customization or even a paid plan. So I thought that was really interesting. And then lastly, you'll be excited for the amazing community that you've enjoyed being a part. If you've enjoyed being part of the Trello community, well, the Jira community is next level. You're going to love it. There's so much content, so many vendors, so many influencers and content creators, and just, you know, generally folks sharing helpful tips and ideas and tricks and hacks and all these sort of things. So the Trello community is, it's just a quieter bunch of crickets compared to how active the Jira community is. And I feel like the Trello community is pretty active. So I thought that was pretty cool. So we're actually going to talk about what to do to prepare. So if you're about to go from Trello to Jira, you're excited, you're ready to do it, that's great. Here's a couple things I want you to do first. I want you to explore the templates. So actually like take time and think about like, here's the different options, here's what they look like. Don't worry, you can create something and get rid of it. You can do whatever you need to, but take your time to explore it. And then start small, please. Like you're going to be, and I told the people this with Trello as well, you're going to be tempted to boil the ocean here and say, wow, I have all of these options. I want to do this, 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 and this. Start small and add more things as you go, because you're going to overwhelm yourself. It's going to forget what's doing what, where. So that's just my best piece of advice is start small. And I've actually had other people recommend that as well. So that's not even just, oh, you're a newbie. Like, no, more senior people in Jira have agreed this is a great practice when you're getting started. Next, get your resources ready. So I'm going to share some resources with you all, and where you can learn more, but make sure to have that sort of stuff ready, because your team's going to need some help. You're going to need some help. You're going to have some questions, and you want to be ready to lean on those and get the help that you need. And then lastly, map out your workflows. So start by looking at the way things can be set up in Jira with those templates, but also map out your workflow and think, okay, here's what I actually do. And if it's already in Trello, then that's great because you've got that map already. But think about, okay, well, I want my work to go through these sort of stages, and I want these types of people to be interacting with these cards, and the expectation is they do this and that type of thing. So have that written out, so then you can go build that in Jira, rather than, you know, that'll help you start small, because a lot of this, you'll just start clicking all the buttons and be like, oh, I want this. And it's like, does my workflow need that? Maybe not yet. All right, so it's demo time, everybody. If you're ready for this, we are going to talk about basically what I did. I was like, okay, I'm going to create some spaces in Jira and mimic some of the things that I do in Trello, and then kind of just, you know, play around for a few minutes and go back and forth between them. And so if there's anything anybody wants to ask, I'm going to try to look at the chat here too and go through any specific sort of questions about if as I'm playing along, if you're like, oh, what does this look like? Or how does this look in Trello? Or how would you do XYZ? Post in there, and I'll try to get to that. But yeah, I just want to spend the next little bit of time going through here and helping everybody kind of see what all it actually looks like under the hood, so to speak. So first of all, the one board that I was thinking about using as an example is I create a lot of YouTube videos. And so I have a couple different boards that I'll use where this board is actually an older one, as I'm kind of like migrating some processes over. But this is kind of my general sort of workflow that I was like, let's see how this would work in Jira. And so I've got a how it works sort of thing here. And this is kind of the closest I get to documentation in Trello, is a list with a card for things. But I probably could, you know, add a shortcut, or I could add some sort of like pages here in Jira that would explain like exactly how this works. Ooh, it's a Confluence template here. So yeah, so okay. So like I said, haven't played with all of those pages yet, but I know that's, you know, an option. I could have that right there instead. But then I have the different list of like everything goes through, starts as an idea, and then I've got to, you know, do some work producing ahead of time, pre-production. Then I've got to actually gather the assets, which is like recording things, doing voiceovers. It's doing all of, you know, getting everything together. And then there's post, which is where I'm actually editing it and putting all those pieces together. I'm getting some extra, you know, music if I need that. I'm getting some, you know, different screen grabs or whatever else I need in there. And then I'm obviously going to publish the video, and then there's a whole checklist with promoting. If you've never created YouTube videos before, creating the video is not even the hard part. It's actually getting it distributed and out there with everybody. So that's kind of what my workflow looks like here. And so the way we could set that up in Jira is you could see we've basically got, you know, same sort of list here. So I could do the same sort of thing where I have like ideas, and then I have, you know, have pre-production, think I need to add, this is where I'll need to add when you have to add different statuses here. So maybe list might actually be, I'm curious how Jira experts would do this as well. So feel free to make this more interactive and say like, oh, Brittany, here's how I would set that up. Yeah, so anyways, so I could make that in here. Let's see what I've got here. Or well, no, I want my actual board here set up here. So I need to go add, this is where I need to go to my project settings, right? And that's where I'm gonna have to update the like different types of statuses, because right now it thinks, you know, something can either be to do, doing, or done. And so when I renamed those lists, that wasn't helpful enough for it, because I need to tell it, let's see, project settings, details, category, issue types. So I know there's task. Is it within here? There we go. So there's status. Let's see. I'm not interested in apps. All right, we're gonna leave this with the to-do, doing, and done for now, just because I'm not gonna make you watch me click through things in Jira, but that's where that's one of my sort of learning curve things about it, is understanding how, like in Trello, changing this would be as simple as literally changing the name of it to whatever. Whereas in Jira, I understand the board function is a little bit different because, and it needs to be, because this is just sorting by status. And so I actually think I've seen ways you can also make a board that will show by different sort of things. So like you can make it by different fields on a card. But this seems to be kind of the default view here. It wants to go through status. So we'll do that. And then the core unit of my board is a video idea. And so whenever I have a new video idea, I drop it in there. So let's just do, how about a video about using Trello and Jira together. And so that issue's been created, and I can click, open it up. And again, you know, looks kind of similar to my Trello card, honestly, where I've got, you know, like we've got these sort of fields on here where I can set a due date for it. So I could say 30th, I could give it priority. That's something that's already here in Jira that I didn't have in Trello, but I could add that in Trello if I wanted to. I don't actually have that, but I could easily create a custom field that would let me do that. So that could work. I can add labels in here. I've already created some about like, is this gonna be a live stream? Is this like queued to be next up? Is it about a power up? You can pin specific fields, which is kind of nice. There's nothing to do that in Trello, which I think is very interesting, because that's where we probably could use a little bit more UI of stuff. If you're being able to say, oh, let's move this up to the top, or let's move this over to the side, like that could be kind of fun to do that. But there's different ways you can kind of interact with that depending on the power-ups you're using. But again, it's not as simple as like, oh, here's the fields and let's, you know, pin them or whatever. So that's pretty similar. And then what else do I have in here? Oh yeah, so I've also got, you know, I've got a doc with some ideas where I'll do things. Can I Command V here? I can't Command V here, so that's a little bit sad. I love being able to do that in Trello. Like I can literally just paste on the card and it will automatically attach it. But it looks like I'm gonna have to actually attach it here. I know there's an attach link option. Maybe I have to add that as a field on the card. Let's see. Actions menu, figure. Attachments. Use this date. Because I've seen that in one of my other environments. Maybe we'll just, let's see. I can make a field that links to a URL. So document, which will always be a Google Doc. So hit save, changes there. And then let's see, let's go back. Just to the project, back to project, thank you. All right, and so now you see I've got, there we go, more fields, document, paste the link in there. So I can access that. There's definitely, there we go, add web link, that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so we can have, you know, this is the URL and this is the content. call it whatever we want. And then it shows up there and I can easily click and go straight to it. Even has the Google Drive icon. So that's there. People can vote on it, which in Trello, you can also do that, but you need to add the voting power up. That's configured here out of the box. And yeah, you can watch cards and share them. And so then, at that point, it's just drag and drop. So it's like, I'm working on it. Okay, cool. I can, add anything in here. I can add, I've seen, let's see, did I set this space up for, I don't know if I set it up for configuring subtasks, but you definitely can add subtasks in it. First of all, you could do it in the description if you wanted, just with a little bit like thing 1, thing 2. But I know there's also subtasks and child issues. This is where I kind of think Jira gets a little bit more complicated, is because, but at the same time, I know it's something people want in Trello, is being able to go through different, I want to actually have dependencies, and I want to have this task is related to that. And for me, that's more complicated than usually, like if I'm doing that, it's more complicated of a workflow than I want to be working with. But sometimes you can really choose. Sometimes there definitely are dependencies. So that's one way you can do that as well. And then, yeah, when I'm working on it, I can just move kind of things over. I can attach any files if I have images or whatever. When I'm done, I can attach the final video if I need to for my computer. I can do, whatever I want to do there. And you can see history. So if you're familiar with it in Trello, at the bottom, we have the activity, which kind of shows a log of everything that's happened in there. And work log, I think that, yeah, that actually shows, because you can do time tracking in Jira as well. That, depending on how you've got it configured, comes out of the box, I think, whereas in Trello, you can add power-ups that do that as well. So yeah, so I'm going to pause now as we're starting to get to the end here and just start going through some questions and seeing if there's anything that it's like, oh, this would be great to answer while we're in here. Let's see. I'm starting up here. Todd has a question. What's the best way to add to-do items to a Trello board without having others see my things that I need action? For example, yeah, okay. So so one of the things I kind of like to do is I mean, it depends. If it's something like I'm working out of a team board and I don't want other people to see it, what I might do is just have a different like personal board. And so I actually have a board where I keep track of, it's kind of like my my primary to-do list, where I get things from other boards and feed it in there. And there's a lot you can do with Trello with like mirroring cards and linking cards, and just even with like simple automation of linking back and forth between things, where you can say, if this happens in this card, do it there. You can use something like Unito. And so that's where I have sort of my like personal board, where I might have like, hey, follow up with Bob, or I might have, hey, I don't necessarily want to add this as an issue in GitHub, but I want to, remember I need to do it. Well, I can add a card to my personal Trello board, and nobody on Jira, GitHub, or Trello is seeing that. It's in my own specific board. So that's probably the best way that I recommend handling that, is having a team board, but then having your own sort of board that's private with only you things, and then grabbing cards from your team board to come into your board and mirroring them. So I could do a whole webinar on how exactly to do that. But yeah, so that's definitely one of the things that I would recommend with that too. Let's see what else we got in here. Is it okay or best practice that both Trello and Jira coexist in a process flow? For example, we have a process that starts in Trello, moves to Jira for generating PDF docs and securing approval, and then back to Trello for the completion of the process. I absolutely think so. And so, like I said, I'm still, newer to the Jira process and the spectrum of people here, but I 100% think that's the case, because there's certain things that it's just gonna be easier to do in one or the other. And I'm about to kind of show how you might want to go about choosing one or the other as we wrap up here. But I've heard from a lot of people that their teams actually use both, and Trello is kind of quicker for getting things up and running, really quickly, or road mapping ideas. And Jira is maybe better if it's like, oh, I need this to actually be tied to kind of some implementation stuff with GitHub for another team, or, you can even use tools, like I said, like Unito, to kind of mirror things back and forth between, okay, it's happening in Trello and in Jira. And so, yeah, and that's the nice part about them both being owned by Atlassian, is that they can jump back and forth pretty nicely with each other. So I know it's not perfect, but there are a lot of, ways to, like in Trello, for instance, you can create automation that just says, hey, once this is at, a certain stage, go create a card in Jira. So yeah, it's literally like there's a whole series of actions that you can do, or you can post a comment on an issue in Jira. So there's lots of different things you can do with that as well. Can I have 2 workspaces on the same board from 2 different originators? I'm not sure I entirely understand that question. 2 workspaces on the same board. In Trello, at least I definitely don't know the answer to that for Jira. For Trello, Trello is very workspace focused in the sense of like, there's not really much you can do that I know of to combine workspaces, but within a workspace, you have what's called a workspace table where you can see cards from multiple boards. So let's say I have a bunch of different boards in this workspace. Well, I can go to a table and actually combine information from multiple of those boards into a view here. And so, I can select, let's say I want this one and this one and this one and this one. Of course, it's not going to actually work because I'm doing a live demo, but in theory, I can select multiple boards here and say, yeah, show me all of, the cards from these multiple spaces here. And so you can't do it from different workspaces, but you can do it from different boards, which is how a lot of people might kind of use Trello more. You probably have one workspace and have a lot of boards in that workspace. Let's see, more questions. What we got here? Why did Atlassian have Trello if we can pretty much do everything in Jira? So I'm gonna be honest, after all of this, maybe if I play around with Jira a little bit more, I'll be more of a fan. I'm not a Jira fan. I'm still gonna keep using Trello. You can do similar sort of things and it's great, but it's also like, I don't think I'd feel comfortable yet saying like, oh, hey, here's, let me quickly spin up I just had an idea about keeping track of all of my pets' records in Jira. Let me quickly spin up a Jira board. It's not going to happen. And part of it, again, is just because I'm more comfortable with Trello. So I'm sure the inverse is true. If you're really comfortable with Jira, why would you're probably sitting there thinking, why would I go create a Trello board about my pets' records? Like I could do that in Jira. Sure. And so I think it's interesting. And I'm going to talk more about this in a second as I wrap up about how to choose them. But voting's very interesting. Let's see. Let me see. Can I customize permissions so that only I can move the cards, but everyone else can comment on my cards? Yes. I assume this question is about Trello. I know this is possible in Jira. I don't know the exact settings for doing that, but I know it is possible. But it's definitely possible in Trello as well. So when you add someone to your board, let me bring up the share menu, you can add them as an observer. And what an observer is, it basically means that someone can see content on the board and they can view all of the cards, they can comment on it, but they cannot actually edit the cards, they cannot drag them, they cannot move them, they can't do anything with that. So that is an observer role. It's only part of the premium plan, but that is definitely something that you can do in Trello. So let's see, Rodney, I'm a Jira expert and still prefer Trello for some processes and apps. So yeah, so let's jump back to the slides as we're kind of finishing up here. And that's exactly the next thing I want to talk about is like, so when do I use Trello? When do I use Trello? And Jira and Trello, they can definitely coexist. And so you might want to consider using Trello if you just need something lightweight and quick to launch. Or if you have a less technical audience, like for instance, if, I'm planning a trip with some friends, I'm probably not going to get them to learn how to use Jira for a weekend trip somewhere. Whereas they don't need even a Trello account. They don't need, I can literally put everything together in a Trello board and send them a link that they can just view on their phone. It doesn't feel intimidating at all. They can use the Trello app to drag and drop and like whatever they want to do. And I know everybody here is probably like, yeah, you can do that in Jira too. But I promise you, if you're not as familiar with Jira, it does not feel as intuitive to jump right in there. And so also, if you just want something that like integrates with a lot of like personal apps, and what I mean by that is not necessarily like, yeah, Jira integrates with all sorts of things, but so does Trello, and it integrates with more of like personal productivity tools. For instance, I use something called Aki Flow that helps me organize like my calendar and Trello, and also like quickly capture like tasks that I'm not worried about like planning my life around, like, oh, I need to set up a doctor appointment. I don't need a Trello card for that. I just need a reminder basically. And so those types of apps tend to work well with Trello, and Trello is like one of the most commonly supported things in that, whereas Jira often is becoming more of like a personal tool, and I'm seeing it in a lot of those as well. But definitely something that you can definitely something that you could organize and set up however you need to there. So just before I close here, I want to share some recommended resources. So follow these experts if you want to jump into Jira. I'm going to include these links. I'll post them in the chat here in a second, but Jimmy Talks Jira YouTube channel, Jexo, they've got some amazing content about getting started with Jira and things like that. Rodney's here. He's one of my resources here. I love it. If you've got Jira questions, head over his way, especially if you're an admin, but all sorts of things there. And then ApeTech Tech Tutorials, check that out. And then join the Atlassian community. And so, yeah, so that is that. I'll leave it here. Feel free if you have follow-up questions, message me on Twitter. I've left my email here. I've got my YouTube channel. I'd love to have you join. I'm going to post in the chat here as well, a link to my Trello newsletter. If you want to go ahead and join that, feel free to. But yeah, thank you everybody for having me. And I really appreciate it.
And thank you for the energy, Brittany, a lot of clarity as well. We love to have you here. So thanks.
Happy to be here.
Thanks on behalf of Trundl and also everybody who is here. I think it is very clear, and that's where there are a few questions today. That's what I'm assuming. And for those of you who are still here, we do have more sessions coming up. Please feel free to join any session that you like. The list is right here for you to see. Thanks, everyone, once again. Thanks, Brittany. All right, take care. And we'll share the presentation once the event is over. You will have access to it.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, I meant to post the links all in there, but they are in this presentation. You'll be able to get that afterwards.
Yes, that is correct.
Perfect.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.